Hi, everybody, and welcome. It's Aucademy with Tigger. It's kind of late on a night that we're recording this, so I was the one that decided to stay up. The awesome usual hosts that are here couldn't make it, but I'm sure they'll be looking forward to watching this one as well. Now, I've already been chatting to the guests we have this evening at length, and half an hour's gone by already with us just talking about topics and ideas and thoughts. But I'm really looking forward to this one tonight. Just for clarification, Tigger, I am a white mid-50s male with shaved head, slightly short hair, and wearing a maroon top tonight. And I am really, really excited to welcome Leah, who will introduce herself visually.
Yes, my name is Leah, or Leah Ahavah, and I am a pale-skinned woman, cisgender woman. I am 30. My hair is not visible. I am wearing a head wrap called a tichel, which is composed of two different scarves, one of which is gold and sparkly, and the other is sky blue and has branches with little birds on them, which you can't see very well. The other thing you can't see very well, whether you normally see things or not, is that I am wearing TARDIS earrings, and I'm wearing a blue shirt with a necklace with a Star of David that opens up into a string of 6 butterflies and then closes back up with a magnet.
Beautiful. So we've spent half an hour talking about Doctor Who already, haven't we? So please tell us a bit more.
Doctor Who, yes.
I know. Tell us a bit more about yourself, please, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So thank you for staying up so late. We are filming this at what is now 11:30 in the UK, because I live in Texas, and I got off of work minutes before jumping on Zoom. So it's only 5:30 over here, and there's actually still light out. It's getting dark, but I am living in Texas. I answer phone calls for a living. I work from home, which I know is difficult for some people, but I really like it. I have a husband and a toddler and a dog. And I'm really into a lot of, I love watching a lot of nerdy stuff, and I also I'm a Lindy Hopper, so I do the partner swing dancing circa the 1920s to 1940s. Yeah.
Thank you for that, and thank you for joining us as well. I know it's late over here, but like we said in our half an hour talk, where we just rambled on, enjoying it so much that I often can't sleep at night anyway. So this isn't really bad, but I am so looking forward to this. Now, I haven't been able to do any research about this at all because I'm a bit all over the place at the moment. So I am really looking forward to being educated. And for those of you out there watching and listening as well, this is going to be a really interesting one. And we're going to talk about head canon, which to me is until we dipped into it very briefly, something incredibly new to me, which it shouldn't be, but it is. So if I may ask,
it's probably just the word that's new to you.
Yeah, it is. I think it is the word. I think it is the word that's new to me. But I mean, some people might know it. I don't. To everybody else, then yeah, what is head canon in pop culture?
So you probably already know canon is just fact about a story, a character, just something that is in the original work. Like, random example, we know that in Middle Earth, it is canon that hobbits are halflings. They are small, they are short, they are between 2 and 4 feet tall. We know, that Frodo is Bilbo's nephew. That is canon.
Definitely.
A headcanon is something that a consumer or fan infers strongly and backs up basically with the text meaning whether it's the work, whatever work it is, academia likes to call it a text, whether it's text or not. So an example of a headcanon would be that Frodo and Sam are a couple.
Yes, yeah.
It's easily supported with a reading of Lord of the Rings, but it is never explicitly stated. So a headcanon is basically just a fancy term for fan theories.
Okay, well, thank you.
So an autistic headcanon is specifically a headcanon where somebody is saying this character is autistic. That's all it means, is this character is autistic, even though the work didn't say they are.
Okay.
And even if the creators say they're not.
It's interesting. So I now I get where headcanon is. I mean, yeah, I'm a geek. So canon for me is very important in all the genres I visit. You know, the from Lord of the Rings, which I'm quite passionate about as well, to Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, other kind of wonderful things, books I've read and so on. So I now get that concept of canon. And that for some people, canon is, wow, fixed and safe and must not be changed and so on. But I also get the fanfic theory bit where people explore and through with evidence they see, kind of like add bits, pull things out and make up their own kind of headcanon theories and so on based on what's presented in front of them, which is gorgeous. So
what I'm kind of talking about as headcanon is not quite the same as fanfic, because fanfic is very much a creative activity. It has a lot of what if involved. It has a lot of new creator input involved, whereas straight headcanon is just, these are the facts in the work that support this idea. And it's not doing anything with the idea. It's not creating any new content with the idea. It's just saying this is a fact. This is a thing that you can argue about the text. Like, people in academia, they spend their time arguing about texts. And if the text is old enough, then it's legitimate to argue about in academia,
Thank you. So how does this, so focusing that bit then, how does this relate to being autistic?
Well, often the best autistic representation in media comes from characters that are not canon autistic. Like, people can argue all day about, what they do or don't like about shows like Atypical or The Good Doctor and, all these things and all these really stereotype portrayals. Anytime you end up with, where they're advertising this character or presenting this character as autistic, you very often get, a very stereotyped and often negative or potentially even harmful representation that can kind of bolster people's ableism. But when you get characters that just exist as autistic within their works, but they're not labeled as such, and in fact the creators often didn't think of it, they just didn't realize they were writing on an autistic character, they're often just more well-rounded, and they often become much more relatable representation to a lot of people. Not necessarily, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush. There are people who relate to Atypical, there are people who relate to The Good Doctor, and I don't want to invalidate any of those experiences. It's just that a lot of people, those things do rub a lot of autistic people the wrong way. But when you see yourself in a character that they don't actually say is autistic, but they totally are, then you actually do get that representation. It's just not officially labeled as such.
Well, I must confess, I've dipped into those shows to a certain extent, and then it just at the moment it just isn't me. It isn't something I'll continue to explore for whatever reason. So I've seen bits of Atypical and The Good Doctor and so on, and I've just gone, no, not at the moment, not for me. But I do, as where we're going, have looked at other characters and thought, oh, hang on a minute, that's interesting. That reminds me of, and I kind of have gone down that route with other characters as well, which I suppose leads nicely onto the next question. So why do headcanons about characters being coded as autistic occur when the characters themselves are not stated as being autistic?
Well, I think that writers, they try to write interesting characters, right? And they try to write interesting, distinct characters. And autistic people they can be very interesting people. Where, of course, there are many, many ways, to exist in the world as an autistic person, a lot of which are not obvious to neurotypical people.
Mm.
And, I don't want to say neurotypicals are boring, but you can only write so many of them.
Yeah.
Your characters that you just try to make your character interesting and different from your other characters. If you do that enough times, you're inevitably going to write someone who's autistic, whether you intended to or not. Especially if you don't know what autism really is.
Would you think, because I think there is certainly a lack of true representation. There isn't enough of genuine portrayals of autistic individuals in the media. It is changing, but it's slow, but there's a huge backlog of predictable as how media interprets autistic individuals and so on, going back films, TV shows, radio shows, etc. But why do you think then we as autistic people kind of look then and assign these autistic characteristics to individuals, the characters we see or hear or read?
I don't think that we're assigning the traits. We're just recognizing the traits. A lot of, it's a pretty common idea that neurodivergent people are really good at recognizing each other.
Yeah.
You walk up to a neurotypical person, you say that you're autistic, and they're like, "What? No." Yeah, and you walk up to another autistic person, you say, "I'm autistic," and they're like, "Duh."
It's like, if it's do you think, and this is a question we haven't got here, my apologies if it's okay with you, and it's about the writers, and it's about okay, so they want to sell their products, which is their script, whatever. Yeah, they want to get the companies involved. They want to get it up on stage, on screen, etc. And they'll be exploring then anything to make it that little bit different from what is normally handed out to media moguls and so on and so forth. But do you think that for some individuals that there could be, I've written a bit, but not like some individuals I know. Do you think there's for some individuals, a bit of themselves coming out in terms of the fact that they're also maybe assigning bits of their own identity that they weren't aware of? Do you think that could be a possibility?
My degree is in creative writing, so you write what you know.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that, everyone who's writing these shows are autistic, but what you know can include people and there are so many people who are unidentified autistics out there that great, I based this I was inspired for this character by this person I know who is neurotypical, right?
So we
and for those who can't see, I did air quotes just then.
Thank you for that bit. The other bit, we were supposed to start at 11. We started at 11:30 because we just talked about so many things. But one of the things we didn't have on the question list was the idea of your the characters you've seen in media over the years, and you've gone, you've gone, yes, I
Yeah.
bet. So should we talk about a few?
Yeah, let's do that. And I will, I know that this is going to go up on YouTube later, and I know there's that little preview thing. I'm going to start doing this when I switch from one character to another character, so that people who don't like spoilers can, if they, if you haven't seen a show and you have to talk about the show in order to get into that. So I will try to remember to do something that you can easily just skip ahead if you don't want spoilers for a particular work.
You could say spoilers as well, I guess, too.
Spoilers, yes,
yeah,
I did.
Which goes into one character. We've been there already. Sorry, not it.
Well, I don't think River Song from Doctor Who is. I'm really hesitant to label her. In part, because of all the brainwashing, it's really hard. I'm not a mental health professional or a psychologist, and River Song is a rather special case. But I can start with Doctor Who, just not with River Song.
No, we spoke about River before, but in other connections. But great,
yes.
Start with Doctor Who. That'd be heaven.
The hair that you can't see under my scarves is in fact brown and curly, and I grew it out for 2.5 years to cosplay River for the 50th anniversary special. But the character that I would mention in Doctor Who as autistic is actually Osgood.
Yes.
See how it just immediately clicks, or it's like,
no, you're right. I'm also delving.
I don't think they ever specify that she's autistic, but like, come on.
No, awesome. And I'm trying to remember the episode she appeared in as well.
She was originally introduced in the 50th anniversary special.
Yeah.
So, spoilers for Doctor Who now, although, this is quite old by now. I was just doing some last minute kind of refresh research to kind of look up Osgood a little bit before this. And if you just type in Doctor Who Osgood on YouTube, the very first video that comes up is a conversation between the Doctor and Osgood, just a one-on-one conversation between the Doctor and Osgood. From the episode, the Zygon Inversion.
Yeah.
And I don't think you need to watch more than that one clip to kind of figure out Osgood, at least in that sense. Outside of that clip, it's worth mentioning that Osgood is very much, the Doctor is her special interest. Like, she is up to date on every case file that that unit has, and she is a cosplayer. Her personal wardrobe is a mixture of basically every Doctor whose files she's encountered, and she seems to kind of model herself after him a little bit, which is a lot of autistics, they study the people around them to try to figure out how to act.
Yeah, no.
And so she's kind of latched on to him, and she tries to take on a lot of his traits, which isn't in itself a potential hey, might be neurodivergent here. So she's in cosplay as the Doctor while conversing with the Doctor. And just in this one clip, you've got her, frankly calling out the Doctor's nonsense. There's a quote, "You're talking nonsense to distract me from being really scared," which is something that other characters don't do. They just let him steamroll them. And then in the same conversation, she starts just totally oversharing, air quotes, what she would do if she was going to try to invade Earth, and goes into great detail about how the first thing she would try to do is eliminate the Doctor with a bullet between the eyes before he could even get to talking like he always does. And then later she mentions Clara, who they're worried may be dead. And then, when he is kind of, awkward in the face of that, I mean, her next immediate thing is just bluntly labeling, that the Doctor's scared she might be dead. And, all of this, back to back to back to back to back.
What I found interesting was the minute you said, I went, oh, and it was just like, of course
it is.
It wasn't something I may have been a little bit of a Hoovovian as well. It was, I think I was looking at the bigger picture then, and it was just, but of course, and then all of a sudden it made total sense.
And then I don't know if you remember the Planet of the Dead with the flying metal stingrays. It was one of the David Tennant specials before he regenerated.
Was that the one on the bus? When the bus?
Yeah, one on the bus.
Sorry. Yeah, get the bus lands.
Yeah, no. And then there was that scientist guy that Malcolm. The one that the Doctor was working with to try to get them back through.
Yes.
Yeah, that guy. He's quite a bit more stereotyped feeling portrayal, but like if he's not autistic, then I don't know.
What other characters have you seen out there that made you go boom?
So zooming away from Doctor Who here, there are some more recent animated kids movies that have children in them that I feel pretty strongly about. I don't know if you've heard of this. It was just released this year. It's called Vivo.
No, I don't.
So it's on Netflix, and it is starring, and the lyrics, the songs are written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's about it's this really it's a really cute kids movie. It's on Netflix, and one of the videos that I made recently on my YouTube channel, there's so much about the character Gabby in that film that it was too big for me to write a script trying to cover the whole film. So I only did a video just about the song where she introduces herself. It's a song called My Own Drum, and I made a video called My Own Drum from Vivo is an Autistic Anthem, because it is. Like,
I just brought it up on my phone so I can see some images myself.
Yeah, there's I think it's like a 10-minute ish info dump just on the one song, and so this character is she doesn't fit in, and I mean, she doesn't fit in, and I can pull up just a moment while it's easier for me to kind of work off scripts a little bit. So I'm just pulling up the script from that video so I can do just a little bit of quoting. I won't read the whole script because that video already exists. But that particular song, it was just so, I wish that movie came out when I was 10. So basically the chorus of the song, if my computer will allow me to scroll, the chorus of the song, you can already tell that this is straight up an autistic anthem. It goes, I dance to the beat of my own drum. I'm a wow in a world full of ho-hum. I'm a wild young lady, but some, I'd rather be at home with my own drum. Like,
that is lush, isn't it?
yeah.
That is something I will now hunt out and watch, I must confess.
And it also has quotes like, I'm extra, extra, I need you at a 10. Oh, wait, you're at a 10. I need you at a 3. No, I'm going to be a 10. I'm going to be me. It's like, autistic folks who hasn't been told to tone it down,
No, I'll look for that because you mentioned some other ones as well.
Yeah, and just also about Gabby, like just outside of that particular song, she just jumps into things with full enthusiasm, and she's just willing to try anything regardless of whether it's likely to work. And it's just a delight to see. Another character, jumping over to another work. There's a Disney movie that came out recently called Luca.
Oh, I didn't know that one either. This is really bad of me.
That's okay. I mean, these are I don't know how many kids movies you watch. So it's about basically there's a situation where these sea monsters, air quotes, they're called sea monsters in the movie, that they live in the sea, off in this off the coast of this Italian town. And the sea monsters are scared of the humans, and the humans are scared of the sea monsters. And but these two, sea monster kids, who separate headcanon, these two kids are totally, absolutely like young love. But and actually it's not irrelevant because it really plays into what's going on, because this other character, this human character, Julia, my headcanon for her is that she is two things. One, she is autistic, and two, she is ace. And those two things kind of combine to have her fundamentally not understand why her friendship with Luca is threatening to I think his name is Ronaldo. It's been a while since I watched the movie. So like she's just going about having a friendship, and trying to team up for a to win a bicycle race against a bully, a town bully. And like her thing is like she's hyper focused on this race, and teaming up with these two people whose genders or anything else I'm sure she couldn't be bothered to notice. She's just doing her own thing in her own like really authentic way, but and doesn't even it doesn't occur to her why this other character is upset that she's spending so much time with Luca. Because Luca she's a human child, she's in school, and Luca is really interested in books, but Ronaldo is not. And so they connect over being bookish, and Ronaldo feels, I'm gonna feel so embarrassed if I forgot the character's name in the thing I'm talking about, but I think it's Ronaldo. Yeah, it's like he gets really jealous. So yeah, that's pretty much Luca. The other show, another example that I have, I don't know if you've heard of this show. Have you heard of Fringe?
Fringe, yeah. The kind of like sci-fi one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've seen it
So,
for ages.
yeah, I love that show. It's one of my favorites. So a lot of people, like, if they hear you say, oh yeah, I'm going to talk about autistic headcanon and Fringe, they think immediately that you're going to talk about Walter Bishop. And I disagree emphatically. Because autism is something you're born with, right? But most of Walter's neurodivergent traits can be directly traced to having had 7 chunks of his brain cut out.
Interesting one. I mean,
so
it's
neurodivergent.
Fringe.
Well, pretty much certainly. What do you want? He's had brain trauma. But autistic, I personally don't see it. If other people can see it in both Walter and Walternet, his double in the other universe, because remember, all these doubles are genetically identical. Yeah. The doubles are genetically identical, and we know that autism has a genetic component. So, one being autistic doesn't guarantee the other one will be, but it certainly ups the odds. But I'm of the opinion that all versions, there's one canon autistic version of Astrid. The Astrid from over there is canon autistic, but I believe all Astrids are autistic and all Olivias are too. Now Astrid doesn't get as much screen time as she deserves. And because she's more subtle, you kind of have to compare her to other characters to make a point. But for one thing, she shares essential interests with her double, who just happens to, be like a savant in them. She's the one who is a code breaker. She's the one, and not just a code breaker, but just like a code recognizer. She recognizes things and patterns really quickly. And by the way, because of the time zone difference, my husband wasn't able to be here right away. But he actually is here now. The toddler is abed.
Brilliant. So, one's gone to sleep.
What?
Your little one's gone to sleep, which is really good.
Yes. So now that the little one has gone to bed, Elon can join us because he also has contributions on this topic. Well, he's just off screen.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
This is Elon. Do you want to describe yourself at all?
Hi. My name is Elon. I don't know. I'm 35. I am autistic. I am currently a rabbinical student at the Yeshiva University in New York. I was previously working in a chem lab for a while as a grad student in computational chemistry. I've also done some teaching of various subjects, both Judaics and science. And
physical description?
Physical description?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, I don't know is my picture going to be visible on the video or is...
Yes, but we give a physical description for those who can't see.
Okay. So I would say that I am about 6 feet tall, a little bit taller than that. I have very bushy curly hair. I've got a short beard. I have blue eyes. White. I'm actually probably one of the lightest skinned people in my family, I would think. And
yeah, because you're because your ancestry, you've got.
Yeah, my
some-
ancestry is pretty mixed, but I ended up pretty light skinned. So
Thank you, and thank you to join with us and educate and continually added on to my education and as education what of head canon in relation to autistic individuals is. So what are the examples that you'd like to give?
Oh yeah, we were
yeah.
still on Fringe, but Elon arrived in the middle of Fringe.
right.
So we were talking about Astrid, not just the canon autistic Astrid, and of course we're having trouble fitting everyone in the frame because the dog is in the middle.
You thought the dog might come on. Hi. Good to see you again.
There's Frankie. He likes to be in the way, but
That's fine by me.
So kind of lost where I was with
Fringe,
Astrid.
still on Fringe with Astrid.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Astrid, I'm getting my notes on her pulled back up,
Okay.
which of course is being slow. Sorry, it's taking me a moment.
That's
Sorry
okay, don't
for,
worry.
Yeah.
leaving dead air, as they call it.
Well, I must confess, I haven't seen Fringe since I think it first came over here, which is quite a few years. So I've again pulled up some screenshots here, and it's brought back memories. But the multiverse stuff and so on, that's going back a bit in my memory, I must confess.
Yeah. So so when it comes to Astrid, one thing that is kind of useful to know is that the actress who played her hasn't released anything about herself being autistic, but her sister is, which the writers did not know before they made her double autistic. So that kind of helped. That's I mean, at least at least she knows her thumb from her big toe on the matter. And so one thing about Astrid is that like she masks pretty heavily, and I think that it's really important to kind of recognize that when viewing her as an autistic character, because she's got a lot of different layers going on that that make for a very heavy mask. For one thing, we know that that there's a lot more pressure to mask and a lot kind of more just masking in general in autistic women, femme folk, people who aren't dudes. We also know that masking is pushed harder on neurodivergent people of color than it is on neurodivergent white folks. And then add to that she's also had FBI training, which probably includes, undercover training. So, that's something that can make for a really, heavily masked character. We know that she is a natural code breaker. That's also something she studied linguistics as her degree. But another thing about Astrid is that she kind of goes against the stereotype, because a lot of, there's this stereotype about autistics not having empathy, when in reality, there's a huge empathy spectrum, whether you're autistic or not. But Astrid experiences quite a lot of empathy. Like Astrid is the one who figures out why that young observer they meet in the first season is upset, despite the fact that his attachment is actually to Olivia, not her. And she's the only one who expresses any concern about the families of people who were, yanked out of their world when Newton experiments with moving buildings between universes. And she's also the one who figures out, first of all, why her double came over to see her in the first place. And not only that, but she had to figure out how to send her double back home at peace. And and the way she does that is, she speaks to her double and kind of adopts her double's own history to create a comforting picture when it's actually not at all what she experiences. She talks about, not being able to connect with her father because, she kind of, describes her father as someone who really, doesn't get her. When in reality, after that, we get a scene where she interacts with her father and they have a very close relationship. But she makes up a story about a negative relationship and how to process that because of what her double described about her relationship with her father. Unfortunately, there's not as much, I can't say as much about Astrid as I would like to because she just doesn't get enough screen time. But there is quite a lot to say about Olivia. So, there's some of the kind of interaction, things that are like, yeah, you're interacting with other people rather like a neurodivergent person. You've got the fact that when we first meet her, she's butting heads with royals because she can't speak politely to authority. She's super blunt all the time. But another thing that really jumps out about Olivia is that so for those who aren't familiar with the show, Olivia as a child was in a kind of illegal military drug trial with a drug called cortexiphan, and it was supposed to give her abilities, including the ability to cross between universes. And Olivia is the only one who the drug actually works on. It really, causes a lot of damage to all the other kids. And in fact, some of the, other kids, when they're adults, they end up, with abilities they can't control and that end up killing them. That happens to, one or two. But Olivia can not only control her abilities, but she also can use the ability that they actually intended, which is crossing between universes. Now the show explains why she's the only one that's able to do this, because they give her an abusive stepfather and they say that she needs to have a specific combination of circumstances for it to work. First of all, she needs it works the drug that works on perception, and so she needs to have a specific stim level for it to work. They put her in a sensory deprivation tank for her to be able to access this ability. But not only that, it's not only her STEM state, it's also her emotional state. She has to have a very unique combination of love and fear. Okay, well, with 30 kids, what are the chances that other kids have experienced a combination of love and fear and in different levels of STEM? And why didn't it work in any of the other kids? Well, because the other kids didn't have an autistic brain.
I'm digging into the depths of when I saw this program last time. I must confess, remembering some of the storylines and certainly loving the bit about the multiverses and so on. But it's interesting how, like when you said the character from Doctor Who, I just went boom, and automatically I went, yeah, I know. And the minute you said, I went, yeah, I think I can see now. I can see her, and everything kind of fell into place. And there's a degree of excitement about recognizing that as well, I must confess.
Oh yeah, but as I was mentioning, you've got the genetic component at play. So if you're going to say Olivia is autistic, then you have to also be like, well, faux Olivia must be too.
Right.
So you compare the two Olivias and you're like, okay, well, are they both autistic? And the answer, in my opinion, is yes, they are. Obviously, we all know not all autistics are savants and not all savants are autistic, but faux Olivia is a savant. She she works full-time in Fringe division. She's got a very demanding job that is not completely focused on being on the firing range, and yet she is an Olympic gold medalist in marksmanship. She's a perfect shot. Olivia from First Universe is not an Olympic level markswoman, but she becomes one when they treat her and make her think that she's the other Olivia. And also both of these characters are absolute masters at masking as well. You've got faux Olivia, who has a spur of the moment undercover mission posing as another version of herself that she's had basically no briefing on, because the opportunity for this mission happened with no warning. And she's able to convince the people closest to Olivia that she is the Olivia they know.
Do you know of any other? Just the masking bit is interesting me, I must confess. It's something I'm exploring a lot with myself at the moment. And I'm thinking of the predictable, if I can call it that, the characters that are labeled, for their sales pitch as autistic in the media at the moment. And I haven't, as I said, accessed a lot of those programs as yet. Are there any other characters out there that actually, the mainstream characters have recorded that we know and see as labels of autistic, who actually explore the world of masking? Do you know of any?
I mean, there's characters that I've been trying to stick to characters that I haven't already seen other creators make videos about as autistic headcanons, because I kind of just don't want to copycat.
Yeah.
But there is a YouTuber who I'd have to do some digging to find their name. But they did a video. It was a compilation of headcanons, and it included two characters from their special interest, which is Steven Universe. And they were talking about Pearl and Peridot in Steven Universe, and both of these characters, Pearl especially, really tries to mask. Pearl is better at it than Peridot is, but I think that masking is a pretty common trait in non-canon autistic characters, if that makes sense.
No, I can understand that bit. And there are, if we grab another couple of examples, if we may, as well, of individuals that
Elon has some.
Yes, has, yeah.
He wasn't just like distracted reading on the side. He was
so I have since I was 8, I've been very interested in detective novels, and the thing with detective novels is that detectives are always pretty much coded as autistic by society. I would say that most people are convinced that Sherlock Holmes is autistic, or that they're convinced that I don't know, Hercule Poirot is. They're convinced that all these characters are, they're what did you call them? TV autistic, right? Where we think that autistic people are the clever, super observant people that figure everything out except personal relationships.
I'm not a psychopath. I'm a high-functioning sociopath.
Yeah, I
Right.
remember that line.
Referencing Sherlock.
Yeah.
I don't
Oh,
think,
and also the little hand motions because we jumped off Fringe.
yeah, I don't think that, I mean, most of these characters are necessarily autistic. The original book Sherlock Holmes might be, but I'm not convinced of it necessarily. And I don't think the television show Sherlock is actually portrayed. I mean, he might be portrayed as what a neurotypical person thinks an autistic person is like, but I didn't get the impression that the television Sherlock is autistic.
I'm thinking of the books as I read them. I love Sherlock in all his and her and their incarnations as well, and I have obviously read the Conan Doyle original books. Have the set in the other room, and I might explore that actually in terms of the fact that there may be elements there that might make me think a bit more. So yeah, no, that's an interesting one.
So the other thing is, as I said, I don't think Hercule Poirot is autistic. He, if he is, he's definitely masking all the time. And Agatha Christie is very good at writing, viewpoint from different characters of different personalities and different neurotypes. And Poirot is constantly masking. Like, you never get the sense of who he truly is. And I don't think he is autistic. I mean, some people have said he's OCD, and I don't know that he's OCD either. He certainly lets on that people think he's OCD, like, that he wants his toast cut up into squares and that he wants, the room to be perfectly neat and but he's also very comfortable without any of that stuff, whereas someone who is actually OCD would, I think, not be. But there are characters in Agatha Christie who I think are definitely autistic. Miss Marple herself, maybe. We were discussing that, whether she herself is. But definitely she relates to characters who definitely are autistic, better than anyone else does. And I think that's intentional on the part of, I don't know, because I don't know how many of these characters are, canon autistic and what autism was like. She died in the 70s and these books are written in the
also
30s, 40s, and 50s.
The term autistic, I think, didn't exist.
Right, yeah, the term didn't really exist.
He was around.
But there are people who Miss Marple interacts closely with who I would say are, probably definitely autistic. So the first one is, I don't know if you've read The Moving Finger.
I'm afraid I haven't read Christie at all, I must confess.
Okay. So in the book, The Moving Finger, it is written from the perspective of a bloke who is very neurotypical. He's a young man. He's a little bit misogynistic, that he has preconceived notions of what women are like and what he is supposedly a fighter pilot. He had some sort of an accident, and so he's supposed to recuperate in this village for a year. And the only thing that he wants to do is get back to flying airplanes, at least when he, goes to the village. He meets, right, so what's going on in the village is that there's someone sending letters to everyone of blackmail. And he gets involved because obviously he goes to the village with his sister who's supposed to be taking care of him. And they receive a letter in the mail, suggesting that they are intimate, him and his sister, where it's not clear whether the letter writer doesn't even knows that they are him and his sister, because but whatever. So the thing is, he meets a young woman whose name is Megan, who his sister describes as, when they first meet, she describes Megan as a changeling. And Megan is described as she's in her young 20s, or perhaps just 20. She's described as a changeling. And Megan lives with her stepfather and her mother and her two younger brothers, who I believe are from the second marriage. She does not get along well with her stepfather. She doesn't get along well with anyone. In fact, when we're first introduced to her, she says right? I said, I suppose you thought me awful, said Megan. And then he says, why should I? And then she says, because I am. And then I said sharply, don't be stupid. So he tells her, don't be stupid. And she says, that's just it. I'm not really stupid. People think I am, but they don't know inside that I know just what they're like and that all the time I'm hating them. And throughout the entire book, everyone is trying to, force Megan into the career of whatever the ideal young woman should be doing. She should be finding a husband. She should be going into secretarial work. The scout leader is trying to get her to volunteer on some mission or whatever, because that's what eligible young women should be doing. And Megan is definitely not interested in any of those things. So Jerry, the main character of the book, falls madly in love with Megan after basically just a few chapters. But he doesn't know her very well either. He's also, I think, projecting himself on her. And so throughout the narration. And anyway, the end of the book is very interesting because it turns out that Megan and Miss Marple have meanwhile solved the entire case. And so that the murderer, so the blackmail turns into murder. The murderer is actually her stepfather. And the blackmail was just a front for her stepfather murdering her mother so that he could then marry his, much younger governess. And she figured this out because everybody got a blackmail letter except the governess. So the mother supposedly, right, she committed suicide because, she didn't want the accusation that was in the letter to become public to the husband. But this was all a front of the husband, because the husband figured that if he murders his wife, that's the first person who's suspected. But if she commits suicide because, she got a letter in the mail saying that I'll tell, your husband X and Y, in the next few days or whatever, then it would be less suspicious. So Megan figures this out. And she decides, or maybe Miss Marple decides, it's not clear because Jerry doesn't know, and he doesn't know either of them very well, even though he is head over heels in love with Megan, that the best way to do this is to trick the father into trying to kill Megan with a constable witnessing so that, the police would take seriously the fact that the father is actually the murderer. The stepfather.
Yep.
So also, the other thing about Megan is that, everybody throughout the book has been commenting on her stare being either, vacant or entirely intense. And so when she's doing this, she goes to the father and she says that, I need you to give me, right, I don't remember, 1,000 pounds or something. And the father says, why? And it says she suddenly looks him in the eye and says, because I know what you did on Saturday and I need 1,000 pounds so that I can, I don't remember, do whatever. But the point is, right, she is suddenly a very different person. And the guy who is Jerry, the narrator, who's head over heels in love with her, is taken aback at the way that she can play this part. And, someone who's brash, confident, a scoundrel, and whatever. But the sense you get is she can do that because she's been masking herself the entire book. She's been putting herself out there as, everybody sees her as stupid and as, oh well, her father died. Sorry, yeah, and her mother married, and she's never going to amount to anything. She's right, and they've all been seeing her in their own way, and she's just sort of been masking and going along with that. And it's like, well, if you want to see me as, a stupid woman with her head in the clouds, then that's fine. And now she's trying to, in order to trick her stepfather into confessing, she's just putting on a different persona of, the sort of scoundrel that like, so she can slip very easily from one to the next. And I think it's because, right, she doesn't, she's clearly autistic. And since no one understands her anyway, she doesn't, no one understanding, a bookish daughter in the young 20s who doesn't like to go to balls and parties and, doesn't do the kind of things that educated young women are supposed to be doing in order to find a husband.
And doesn't have the right facial expression.
Right.
In those days.
But she can slip to, they already see her as someone damaged or someone, I guess, psychopathic or changeling or whatever. So she uses that to her advantage, and she's like, well, okay, you want to portray me that way? Like, I can trick my stepfather into confessing, because he doesn't know me as I am, so he also doesn't know, me from a blackmailer or from a thief or from whatever else.
If that's
So
if that's the part you're gonna cast me in, then I'll play it.
Right. Like, I can play this part as well as the other thing. And I think one thing that's sort of sad at the end of the book is, well, at the end, she decides that she does love Jerry, the narrator, enough that they're going to get married. But I think there's something melancholy in that it's still clear he is not going to understand, his own wife, even after this, where she's sort of let down the mask for him. She's let down her guard only for him, I think. And it's not clear at the end of the book that he's still what he's perceiving her as. And I thought that was a very interesting choice. The other character, so as I said, Miss Marple seems to, whether she's autistic herself, I'm not decided yet, but she seems to have a way of relating to people who are. So there's a character, Craddock, who is sort of the inspector. He's introduced as her nephew. He calls her Aunt Jane. And he's an orphan. His godfather was the head of Scotland Yard. So once his parents died, he went to live with his godfather. So he's into the detective profession by, I guess, inheritance, although he's good at it.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have the ability, right? He only has the ability to emotionally come out only with Miss Marple. And you see this even relating to the other constables. He's always somewhat guarded and reserved. And you find out in one of the books that Miss Marple is not actually his aunt, that he met her, he would happen to just be the constable on one of the investigations with, I guess, another constable. And since, he's the only constable who got along with Miss Marple, because the other ones all see her as this, intrusive, pushy woman who's trying to solve their cases for them. But he got on with her at a deep level, so they started joking that, she's the aunt that she's, anytime that she comes up, you're the constable who gets to deal with Aunt Jane. And so he's sort of adopted her, but they have this tight bond that he really does not have with any other character. He's not married. He's not, I don't believe he has any other relations. Obviously, he has his godfather, who is the head of Scotland Yard, who, doesn't really appear in the book. But also I get the impression that his godfather is very, busy, and their relationship at this point pretty much relates to, have you solved X case yet? And, I have 20 other cases that also need attention. But he does have this bond with Miss Marple, where he doesn't have it with anyone else. And no one's able to understand him, I think. And in that sense, I think Craddock is definitely someone I see as autistic. And that he has a really deep emotional bond with Miss Marple. And she does with him. That, like, the other constables do not really see or understand. And I think she sees him in a different light than the other constables do as well. They think.
So I've got this idea now that there'll be a chat going on when this goes out on Saturday, and I suspect I have a sneaky feeling an awful lot of the chat will be, as people do sometimes in the chats on Aucademy, saying, "What do you think about so and so? What do you think about so and so? What do you think about this character? What do you think about that movie? What do you think about this person on television? What do you think about this cartoon individual?" Let's say, and a lot of people will be thinking about, people they've seen or read, throughout the years and so on, that suddenly stand out to them as, hey, hang on a minute, I think that because of this and so on and so forth, that they may be an autistic individual and so forth. But then there's a question I'm interested in that is and it is, do we want to see ourselves represented, to see autistic humanity in the media? And I think it's a really interesting question, because there's a certain degree of what we see already, such as, you know, Atypical, The Good Doctor, and so on, doesn't really give us justice as, you know, awesomely autistic individuals across the globe. They kind of, if anything, just continually reinforce the stereotypes we mentioned before of, you know, the, you know, like everybody, if you say to most people, they will say Sherlock, oh, you know, yeah, autistic.
That's what happens when you get neurotypical creative teams, neurotypical writers, producers, directors, and actors, without involving autistics in the process. Like, I think, I mean, saying, do we want representation? It's like, of course we do, but we want it to be like representation, not propaganda parodies.
Right. I mean, The Good Doctor, he does represent, I suppose, one kind of autistic, but you know, although it's a bit exaggerated, but there are many people who are autistic who are nothing like the Good Doctor, right? And even Sherlock, and as I said, the original books, he may well be autistic, although, you know, that part of him gets exaggerated in the film versions. But the issue is, I don't think necessarily that, right, someone who just there's a certain viewpoint of autistic characters, and that is common in media. And so when you have these, you know, headcanon autistic characters, you can sort of, well, this is someone else who seems to be like me, but is not real, you know, written as autistic, so they don't have that exaggerated portrayal where neurotypicals think that it has to come with a bunch of other features that, you know, different autistics may or may not have.
And also, you know, it really makes a big difference when an autistic character, a canon autistic character, is portrayed by autistic creators, and that does exist. It's just really rare.
Right.
There's a kids cartoon in the UK, you may or may not have heard of, called Pablo.
Pablo, yeah, know it well.
Yeah. And obviously, I use mouth words, so I'm not in a position to comment on the authenticity of a, you know, non-speaking autistic portrayal. But there's I try to watch YouTube rather broadly, and there is an AAC user that I was you know, watching a video from where they talk about Pablo, and you know, the summary of their opinion was that, you know, they really love it. The only thing that they the only critique they had that I can recall was that the little drawings, the characters in Pablo's little world, they're all using mouth words.
Right, I see.
In his head.
Yeah,
which I don't know whether AAC users, I don't know whether like internal monologue is you know, is sound words or something else. I mean, I think
the only
some
example
people don't have an internal monologue.
Yeah, the only example I've got there is in my early career, I was very much a signer, and I did a lot of British Sign Language, and it gets to the point where I started to dream in visual representations of hand shapes rather than words. And somebody said to me, that's what happens because your brain is partially rewiring itself because you're doing so much signing. It was my job at the time, and I loved doing it, and then went off on tangents, so to speak. But Pablo is known in Britain as being really interesting, and a lot of families access it. And but what I mean, I think a lot of people would discuss the fact that a lot of representation that the general public see as this is a person, and with autism is what they see and what they hear. Yeah, you get. I mean, and I'm sure we could reel off loads of programs like. I mean, there's part of me that thinks this a bit of a tangent here, but the media representation. Do you think that there is? It almost feels like it's and I want to use the word trendy, but I do and I don't, that I see more and more characters with that kind of like, in TV shows, crime shows, The Bridge, other ones, and so on, where, they're either openly introduced or there's a huge inference that this person is autistic. But all they're doing there is to me, reinforcing the stereotype, not looking at aspects of masking and emotional aspects and so on. And
I think it comes down to taint what you do, it's the way that you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like getting if you have, it's really not representation unless the people being representation are part of the project.
Right.
Nothing about us without us.
You get
like, for instance, what?
I was just saying, I do think Atypical, if memory serves, I might be wrong here, got a lot of flack for the first season or so. And then in the second season made a point of involving writers who were actually autistic and actors who were actually autistic as well, if memory serves.
I believe, yes, that they, at some point, I think they did that, although I haven't seen, by that time, I wasn't seeing the show anymore. But I do believe you're right that whether the second or third season, they did go back and get actually autistic writers, and they introduced another character who was played by an autistic actor.
Yeah.
I don't recall, because I don't remember if I've seen past the first season or not.
I've only seen a few episodes, I must confess, and I thought at the moment this isn't what I want to watch, so it isn't something I delved into at all at this time.
Where I was turned off by the time, as I said, that they may have had more representation. I was already like, okay, this is another character who,
you're supposed to get primary sources as a major part of research for whatever you are portraying.
Yes.
Look at any other marginalized group that's represented without their input. Look at the cinematic framing of focus on white saviors in stories that are supposed to be about people of color. That's what happens when you have a bunch of white people controlling the storytelling.
Right.
It's, or, look at, the way that LGBT plus people are portrayed when it's a bunch of cis het people doing all the creative work.
Yeah.
It's whatever marginalized group it is, autistic or anyone else, they all get heavily stereotyped if they're not directly involved in the making of the work.
Do you think that so the general public sees, hey, this guy's autistic, and whichever show it is and so on and so forth, we've acknowledged, as you said with that Doctor Who character Osgood, whoa, yes. Do you think that the subtle ambiguities of a character that we see like Osgood and those that you mentioned and so on, do you think they have a place in educating the public also with a view to, so the public have a defined idea what it means to be autistic? They may recognize those traits, we call those in an individual on the show, and then see somebody who masks and somebody who is empathic, and they may have thought, I didn't know that autistic people were like that. Do you think that kind of like non-labeling also has a place in educating the general public about what it means to be autistic?
Well, I think it can only educate the public if people realize what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they just see an interesting character. They don't see, it only actually works if it gets pointed out, which often the creators aren't going to do because they don't even realize they wrote an autistic character.
Right. Sometimes when they do, people still don't point it out because it's not what they're expecting as an autistic character. But I think
that's where headcanon does a whole lot, because you can say, hey, look at this character. They didn't present this character as autistic, but look, come on, they're autistic.
Yeah.
there's always going to be characters that are either intentionally or unintentionally coded as having some identity or another. And because people, I like something that John Green said, where when he writes a book, once it's published, he does not read his own book once it's out, because once it's published, it's not his anymore. Yeah, it's his intellectual property, but every person who's consuming it is bringing their own self to the table, their own experiences and their own perspectives, and they're going to see things. There are things that are going to be apparent in his writing to them that were not apparent to him, even though he's the writer. So yeah, sure, he put the words in order, but that doesn't mean that he is the authority on every trait and aspect of these characters. And once you've made a work public and given it to the fans are going to bring themselves to the table. That's what we do as people. Because you can only consume something and relate to it from your own perspective. So of course you're going to bring your perspective to the table. And therefore, of course, there's going to be characters that are autistic when the writers didn't intend them to be, because they just didn't have the perspective to see what they were doing.
I'm interested here, I must confess, in my naivety almost. I don't know. I wonder if there's a forum out there somewhere where, characters in the media world, whichever area it may be, books, films, TV, and so on, where autistic individuals get together and go, yeah, I think he, she, they are autistic, and this is why. Because
if you just look up autistic headcanon on YouTube, you will
have to do this. You see,
material.
Like I said, I didn't have the chance to do my research beforehand.
I haven't made, this talk is somewhat of a preview on a video I'm going to be making about Fringe. We didn't talk about all the things in Fringe about Olivia and Astrid. We got most of Astrid covered, but there is more to say on Olivia that I'll be filming when I get to it.
Yeah, but I do think that, as you said, that these characters, if someone autistic says that they can see themselves in this character and this is why, and it's a character who is not either the struggling guy in high school or the savant detective, but it's someone more complicated that maybe other people would not have seen that character as autistic. And if an autistic person can say that they see themselves in this character and this is why, then it can provide, I do think it can provide a more nuanced picture to others of different types of autism. So
different
flavors of autism.
Flavors of autism, certainly.
Well, just because we're all different, because we're people. People are different.
So when you see when you something comes up, screen, book, radio, whatever, and there's that moment where you go, whoa, what do you then become a detective yourself? Do you then look for evidence as you develop that relationship with that entity on screen or written word, etc.?
I think I do. I've gone back through, several of these books when it occurred to me that Miss Marple, I guess, in her words, adopts people who tend to be autistic. Like, as I said, this Megan character, like Craddock, like we didn't talk about, but in another book where Miss Marple is too old to travel anymore, she has a woman in her 30s named Lucy who does a lot of her detective work. And she's the one who actually compares her to Craddock, which is how I did go back, to look at quotes of their interactions. And these are books I've read several times, but just to pull out specific quotes and see, does the evidence really support, that these characters the thing they have in common, that they all have this bond with Miss Marple, and they all don't have a bond with many other people. So yeah, I did actually go back through and pick out quotes and be like, detective, like, well, can I, what does it look like when the scene is from this person's perspective? What does it look like when they're interacting with Miss Marple? What does it look like when they're interacting with someone else?
I mean, I must confess, when you went again,
for me, it's
Holmes,
been something where I'm a recently identified autistic myself. And so for me, a lot of just processing this realization has been, and noticing in all these other characters, and sort of contextualizing things that I don't think I was not identifying these headcanons before I figured myself out. And so kind of going back and looking at these characters has been something that's helped me sort of categorize my own experiences as someone who's recently discovered.
Well, I wasn't going to say about going back and looking at Holmes myself, but looking at the original written text, not the other media interpretations. But also I was thinking of the fact that when I've watched programs with my partner who is neurotypical, and a character has been, labeled straight away as being, autistic and so on. Very often during some of those, she's turned to me and gone, you do that, you do that, you do that. And I found that quite interesting, I must confess.
Yeah, we were watching Vivo. It was me and
Gotta watch this.
Elon and my mother. So my mother, who's obviously known me my whole life, and Elon, who's only known me as an adult. And we're watching this movie, and oh my gosh, it is like the writers of this movie spied on me as a child. And it's like, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me. And it was like so much so that throughout the movie, my mother and my husband kept giving me meaningful looks.
Right. Yeah, because this character,
like, yeah, if you watch the film, you'll know what I mean.
What's brilliant is I've been looking for some media, some more authentic,
and part of it is just
to watch.
Utterly unabashed enthusiasm. Like, just the fact that, like, neurotypicals, they often seem to me to like feel this need to have the socially appropriate level of enthusiasm. And she's just like, nope, I'm into this. And she's going to be exactly as enthusiastic as she actually is.
So I was about with my partner. I've been looking for authentic, some really decent stuff to watch. And I've kept away from the Good Doctor and Atypical and so on and so forth. Yeah. We did watch The Accountant, I must confess, which I think is The Accountant. It's I can't remember the actor's name. Ben Affleck. It is and isn't a good film from my perspective. And I'll leave it at that. It is and it isn't. But there are moments during that film.
I love me a good bad movie.
Oh, it's
depending on the type of bad.
Like, he plays an accountant who's also a bit of a hitman, and there's a few stereotypes there I'm not really happy about. But there were certain aspects of the movie where my partner just looked at me and went, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, and so that aspect of it as a communication when you find something that's good. So I'm going off on a tangent. I'm thinking of educating those close to me, looking at watching these movies and seeing if they go. And I must confess, when we have watched some stuff of late, people close to me have seen various documentaries and some interesting stuff, and I've turned around and gone, you do that? You've got nothing but wooden coat hangers and you line all your clothes up and go, yeah, I do, yeah, I love it. And it's an interesting way of bridging a kind of communication aspect there as well. But you're right, I don't know if it is changing with what's going on across the planet, but our involvement as autistic individuals in media representations, autistic actors and so on, It's got to change, because all I see a lot of media representation doing is reinforcing those stereotypes, which isn't getting us anywhere. And that's something that I feel very strong about.
I mean, when you continue to have these things being run by neurotypicals, you're going to continue to have the stereotypes. So again, it's not what, it's how and who.
Right. Yeah, I think so. I mean, the same sort of thing probably goes on with any minority, or probably also LGBT. I mean,
any marginalized group,
yeah, like I'm thinking that, right, every gay man in a movie for a while was exactly the same. My brother is gay, and when he came out, there were people who didn't believe it, because they were saying, well, you're nothing like the guys in what's that show with the guys who, like, a reality show is like 4 gay guys, and they like change someone's wardrobe.
The room decoration thing.
That room redecoration thing. I can't remember the name of the show. Yeah, but there were people who told him that, like, you can't be gay, like, because
you're not like those dudes.
You're not like those dudes. Like, you're not. You don't look like Liberace, or
But that's that public stereotyping, isn't it? Of who any minority is. It's that this is the box I know. This is the box I'm going to put you in. And it's like, no, please. That's why I was interested in a bit about, portrayals where individuals mask and are emotional and empathic and so on. Those are interesting portrayals there as well, aren't they?
So I do think there's this thing where, now everything is supposed to have a gay character in it, but they want to have the same gay character they've always had. And everything's supposed to, so many things are having an autistic character, but they still want, as you said, they want a character like the Good Doctor. Or like,
one of the challenges that filmmakers are working with,
right,
is that they have a time limit. They have a finite amount of screen time. You are not getting to know these characters. You're not shadowing these characters through their lives. You're seeing scenes, and they're trying. And when someone is writing a movie, they're trying to convey as much information as quickly as possible to give you as much context as possible. They take shortcuts. Unfortunately, the shortcuts that they take when it comes to any kind of information, it's the vulnerability is that it is prone to stereotyping, because you're trying to communicate something because if you take too long, then you get, Ryan George making a pitch meeting about how this character is there to do nothing but give you exposition.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm literally going to have to draw this to a close a bit, because in my country now it's 5 to 1 in the morning.
Okay.
And
I was wondering how much.
I'd love to explore some of these concepts. Well, you've got an evening ahead of you as well, haven't you? Into that. I'd love to explore some more of these concepts.
7 in the evening here. It's time to go make dinner.
I will be really interested to see what's in the chat. I must confess, when this comes out, various people saying, "I bet this character is. I bet that character is," so on and so forth.
Definitely tell us your own headcanons.
That'd be
as I said, because I was steering clear of headcanons that I have personally seen other creators talk about, because I just don't want to copycat other people's work.
Well, I've just put it online now.
Go search for autistic headcanons and you will see them.
I did, and I was like, wow. And there is tons out there, and this is a world I didn't know about at all, which I'm really surprised. But I didn't know about this at all, and I googled it while we were chatting, and there's just lists, and it's like, well, okay, that's something else I want to look at, because it's something I'm really interested in. We have one final question.
It's a way to go shopping for shows, because if the autistic people are headcanoning someone, then it's not, it's not official canon, then the chances that they're going to be, a more authentic portrayal and you're going to like the show better are potentially higher.
And so I'm going to explore that area, I must confess. But I'm one final question that both of you can answer, if that's okay, and it's about stimming. So we always finish with, so if you're happy to share one,
awesome.
What's your favorite stim?
I think I do this a lot with my hand. Oh, it's not on camera. Yeah. When we talk about religion in the other talk, there's a lot I can say about Judaism and that particular stim. It seemed
I love that one.
better word. It's Judaism has sort of an interesting portrayal of autism, and that's that, for want of a better word, that's the expected stim, I guess.
Yeah, we didn't mention this because we didn't really identify religious texts as being pop culture, but there will be a video series eventually when I finish making all the sources for it. It was supposed to be a video, but it's turning into a series because it just got too heavy for one video, all on why Moses only makes sense in a story as an autistic
We're going to put links to what you do in the write-up.
This is not made yet. My channel has other stuff on it, not Autistic Moses. But Autistic Moses is coming.
Okay, but yeah, so this is the stim that I most often do, or tap my legs sometimes, I think.
Yeah, your foot's going as we speak. But what's funny is this isn't necessarily related to the fact that I am a swing dancer, but like one of the stems that I just naturally gravitate toward is accidental jazz hands. I don't flap per se, but I literally just like my hand just starts going as jazz hands. And also I fidget with this necklace that
the necklace is lush. When it came apart,
I've been wearing this necklace for about 15 years straight. Between 10 and 15 years I've been wearing this necklace without taking it off practically. Like even if I'm going to wear another necklace, I just open it up so that it's a longer chain, stick it under my shirt and wear the other necklace.
Cool. Well, thank you both. I mean, there's some invites there for perhaps some podcasts as well, which I think I'll email you about separately because of our love of certain areas too. But I'm so sorry I'm going to call this to a close because I'm going to get up in the morning as well. And you've got an awesome evening.
We'll have to chat more later, and if other people are so inspired, maybe we can have another head canon with more people in the future. You know, potentially if people even disagree.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's what would be fun, and that's what we're going to see in the chat, I think.
You know, like for
yes
instance,
and no, and so on.
One of the headcanon videos you'll see is on all the reasons why Walter Bishop from Fringe is autistic. You know, and among other characters, but I'm just like, I don't think Walter Bishop's autistic.
Right.
Well, I must confess, at some point tomorrow, I will. I've got all the novels there of Holmes in all those lovely, gorgeous stories, and I will delve into a bit of those from aspects of the Strand and so on, and see there what I think. I think the media has portrayed him in a certain way, but I haven't got time to go into that one. But it is in the
original books.
Yeah, and I still have more characters I haven't even talked about. Like I don't know if you're familiar with the YA novelist Tamara Pierce.
No.
Well, she has a world that has, what is it, like 4 quartets, a duet, and a trilogy, all in the same world.
She
and
has
another
2
trilogy.
worlds, right? She has
There's
2
worlds.
Two
well,
worlds that she has.
Yeah. So in Tortall, there are these 2 characters. You know, the protagonist of one quartet, and then her daughter is the protagonist of a duet that occurs later in the timeline. And I'm convinced that both Alana and Allie are autistic, but their presentations are so different because Alana is what you get when you completely traumatize an autistic child, and Allie is what you get when you bring an autistic child up in an environment that supports their pursuit of their interests and who they are.
So there's more to cover here, which would be lush, and I'm sure there's other topics to look at. An especially interesting podcast would be would be gorgeous as well. But I'm really sorry that I've got to go, as it's just hit 1 o'clock in the morning.
I can.
No, don't. We said that earlier on. We spoke for half an hour before we even started. We just want to talk. So I know we will. So thank you both so much. And so, what was the dog called again?
This is Frankie.
Bye, Frankie.
And he has his own YouTube channel called Frankie.
He said,
where
Send me some
he-
links. I'm gonna have to look at that.
yeah,
We'll put that
he
in as well.
discusses his opinions about topics. They're his opinions. They're not our opinions. I will probably make a video where I respond to some of his videos in the future. But he has, for instance, one of his videos, Frankie the dog discusses economics, where
I've
he
got to look at
explains.
these sound
know.
so lush. Like my
Well, yeah,
apologies.
I mean, of course, according to him, economics is the
Oh.
process where entities claim things, and he claims things by peeing on those things, and so, that makes water a very important resource.
Yeah.
So I will check those out. We'll put those links that you're happy to share in the write-up as well. This has been Aucademy. Please look out for us on all those other formats that are there, the YouTube, the Instagram, the podcasts that we do, so on and so forth. And thank you so much for tuning in. So from two sides of the Atlantic, if I can call it that, it's been lush. Thank you so much. I hope to see you both again somewhere here. And to everybody else, thank you so much for watching as well. It's been brilliant.
Now nice and texting. Thank you all for watching.
Yes. Thanks.
Thank you both. And we'll see you all again soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.